Welcome back to Nothing But the Truth. I'm Trudy Stern, and we have a lot to cover today. From the passage of the big, beautiful bill here at home to the dramatic end of the war in Israel, and now new momentum behind the expansion of the Abraham Accords, this is a moment of real consequence, both for America and the Middle East. And there's no better person to help us unpack it than my guest today. This week on Nothing But the Truth, it is a true privilege to welcome a respected national leader, a champion of American values, and someone I'm honored to call a friend, Senator James Lankford. Senator Lankford has represented the state of Oklahoma in the United States Senate since 2015. Prior to that, he was in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2015. Since arriving in Washington, he has been a thoughtful, principled, and consistent voice on the most pressing issues facing our nation. He is highly respected and was elected by his colleagues in the Senate to serve as vice chair of the Senate Republican Conference, joining the Senate GOP leadership team, where he helped shape the party's national strategy and message. He also serves on several of the Senate's most influential committees, including Finance, Intelligence, Homeland Security, and Ethics. Senator Lankford has also been a steadfast advocate for the U.S.-Israel relationship, standing with Israel in times of crisis, defending its security, and consistently supporting the Jewish people at home and abroad. Senator, it is a true honor to have you with us today. Welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Trudy, thanks very much. That's very kind of you to do a long introduction. It's not needed, but that's very kind of you. Thank you.
So appreciated for all the service that you've done to our country. So let's dive right into the big, beautiful bill. Tell us about it. It passed by the House in one vote, and now it's on the Senate floor, and there's a lot of discussion going on. Firstly, there's a lot of talk about the cutting of Medicaid, leading to the cutting of Medicare. Could you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know what is really in this bill. It's called the Big Beautiful Bill for a reason. It's big. There's a lot of things in it, but it's been public for a long time. This is not like other bills that have been out there. The House version was out 6 weeks before it even came to the Senate, so we had lots of time to be able to look at it. The parts of the Senate bill have had availability 2 weeks. Before the Senate even voted on, but there's a lot. There's border security items in it. There's modernization for air traffic control that's in it. There's a lot of modernization of our military that is in it. There are some reforms of some of our entitlement programs. There's also trying to be able to stabilize our tax policy. Many people know all of the tax rates for every single tax bracket expire on January the 1st of this year. So literally all of them go away. We'll have a massive tax increase January the 1st if we don't act. And so one of the first things that we were trying to do is to make sure we don't have a big tax increase, and as much as possible, keep tax rates exactly the way they are now, and then tweaking some of them. Some of them are like for service workers, no tax on tips, or no tax for senior adults that are low income working senior adults, to make sure they're not paying tax on their Social Security benefits as well as their employment benefits. Those Social Security benefits are exempted out. So there's some things like that that we are tweaking around on it. One of them is the nonprofit sector. A lot of people don't know about. People, if you don't itemize your taxes, you can no longer write off your donations to a nonprofit. So we're fixing that in this bill to make sure that people that don't itemize their taxes still get a chance to be able to write off their tax deductible donations. So there's a lot of aspects that no one is following because they're so focused on the Medicare, Medicaid side of it and what's happening with that.
Wait, before we talk about the Medicare, Medicaid portion of it, the other thing that I am hearing, which I'm sure all of our listeners are also, is that this big, beautiful bill is made to give tax breaks to the wealthy. And I mean, can you speak about that?
I hear that all the time. My colleagues on the left, they talk about that over and over again. This is all about giving tax breaks to billionaires. This literally does not change the tax rate for anybody. No one gets a tax difference on it for any of their tax rates on it. What's interesting is for the top bracket, there is a limitation on the number of exemptions that they can actually take. So, literally, the top bracket of income, their taxes will go up a little bit. It's not because the rate went up, but some of the exemptions went away on it. Ironically enough, it's not a tax cut for billionaires. Billionaires will actually pay a little more in taxes, but it's not because their rate changes, the exemptions changed. On the Medicare Medicaid side, if I can just jump into that one, Trudy,
Oh,
uh,
love to hear it.
there are no changes on Medicare. There's no change on Medicare. There's no changes on Social Security. On Medicaid, there's a couple of things that we are changing. One is for able bodied individuals with no children, we're adding a work requirement. For the other social safety net programs that are out there, like food stamps, what's called SNAP now, or the temporary assistance for needy families, those all have a work requirement that are attached to it as well. That's been around since Bill Clinton actually passed that in 1996. The exception has been Medicaid, especially after the Affordable Care Act changed Medicaid and added a bunch of new people to Medicaid that weren't eligible for it before that are now eligible for it. A lot of those are working age adults that if they're not working, there's no incentive to be able to work to be able to get it. So we think it's good for people. Quite frankly, I come from a biblical perspective. In the Garden of Eden, there was work before the fall. So work is not punishment. Work is not bad. Work is good. It helps an individual. It helps people be able to support their own family. It helps set a good example for their children. So in a way, we can incentivize work. We think that's a beneficial thing. So that's one. By the way, it doesn't apply to pregnant moms or disabled children. It's only those healthy adults with no children. That's who that applies to. The second thing we're doing is we're going back to the states to say states for the last decade have worked the different formulas that states pay less and the federal government pays more. What do I mean by that? Medicare is totally paid for by the federal taxpayer, but Medicaid is split between the state. The state pays part of it, the federal pays part of it. But over the last several years, there are a lot of states that have added what they call provider taxes. It's a very ingenious way. It's allowed by law, but it is a way to get around the state portion. They'll go to their hospitals and they'll say, you kick in a bunch of money. We'll turn that in as if it's coming from the state. The federal government will then have to match our larger amount that we're giving. When they match it, we'll take that money from the federal government, give it back to the hospitals, and we'll have a little more that the state gets to keep. So it's a workaround that actually the state pays less, but the federal government pays more. We're trying to fix that. This is not a partisan issue. In fact, it's funny as it sounds, the provider tax piece was actually recommended by President Obama in his budget in the White House in 2013. This was because everybody sees this as a problem. It's this rising issue of states paying less, federal taxpayer paying more. So we're trying to slowly bring that back down. Over the next 3 years, we'll start a 0.5% decrease for the next 8 years to be able to slowly drop that rate down a little bit so that the federal government is not paying as much. The states are back to paying their full share. And I know there's a lot of states that are mad about that, but that's trying to actually get us back to where we were 10 years ago. The federal government, everybody knows, is way out of balance right now. We've got to find a way to start getting us back into balance. And some of that's pushing back on the state saying you're trying to balance your budget as a state by taking the federal government farther out of balance. Everybody's a citizen of their state, but they're also a citizen of the United States. We got to take care of both those budgets.
So just curious, if this came up in the Obama administration, is this something that the Democrats are fully supportive of now or no? Because it's so partisan that even though it was a Democrat initiative, now when it's a Republican Senate with President Trump bringing up the big beautiful bill, this is not being seen as positive. So
No, it's the Democrats are not supportive of it now. In fact, what's interesting is in 2013, President Obama recommended this change be done in 3 years. We're doing it in 8 years. We're giving more time for the states to slowly make that transition, knowing it's a hard thing to be able to do. They've got to be able to figure out how to balance their budget as well. But we actually give more time than what President Obama did. This shouldn't be a partisan thing. This should be just looking at the federal budget and trying to be able to figure out how we're going to start working towards balance. So our primary goals: don't have a tax increase, keep the rates the same as they are now, and then start trying to figure out how we're going to also be able to balance the budget in other areas.
So what are the main sticking points here? There definitely is a lot of chatter on the Democrat side. You open up the news, you watch the news, and there is screaming and yelling that this is horrible and this is the worst bill ever.
Yeah.
I think I saw that Schumer is going to be reading the entire 1,000 pages onto the floor. What are the main things that are in contention?
Yeah, the biggest areas in contention are this change in Medicaid that we're saying to states, hey, you've got to pick up a bigger portion. It's not a huge change, but it is significant. States will feel it. And that's saying, hey, you got to go back to where we were several years ago, where you pick up more of the burden for this healthcare cost piece. That's one big piece. The other one is on what's called SNAP, what some people call food stamps. Food stamps SNAP, that program is 100% paid for by the federal taxpayer, but states actually distribute the benefits of that. The SNAP cards and actually get it out and they run the programs. Well, that means there's no incentive to actually be efficient because they don't have to pay the bill. So there are a lot of states that aren't efficient, kind of wink, wink. They'll allow as many people as they want to because it's just free federal money coming into their state that they can hand this out. The states all have a rating system that's standard for everybody on what your error rate is in getting this out. There's just never been a consequence for it. So we add a consequence to it and say, hey, if your error rate is greater than 6%, and we think that's pretty generous, if your error rate's bigger than 6%, then you've got to start paying as a state part of the portion for SNAP. Now, if your error rate is less than that, you don't have to pay anything. It's still totally paid for by the federal taxpayer. But if you've got a high error rate, the state has to start chipping in some of the funds to be able to cover this as well. That puts skin in the game for them. That's one of the areas that's become contentious. People are saying we're trying to take food away from people that desperately need food. No, we're not. We're trying to say all the people that are eligible to be able to get this benefit should get this benefit, but people that are not eligible to get the benefit should not be eligible to get it and shouldn't get it. And so that's a big piece you're going to hear contentious. The most contentious, the one you brought up, is that Democrats are constantly saying this is all about billionaires, all about billionaires, all about billionaires. They really want a big tax increase on the top brackets to say those folks should pay a whole lot more. They're paying 37% of their income now to the federal taxpayer, and they just believe that should go up a whole lot more. We don't. We think, okay, let's find a way to be able to have a rate that's as low as we possibly can and still have income coming in. Now, the lowest rate is 10%, and then it graduates all the way up to 37%. That's a pretty big rate that's up there as well already for the highest bracket. So for us, we're trying to be able to focus in on how can we keep a fair tax system, be more efficient in the way that services are actually delivered.
Before we move on to the next topic I wanted to speak about, there is a lot of talk that Medicare will be cut. Is that completely false?
Completely false. Yeah, there's no cuts to Medicare at all. No change to Medicare at all in this whole thing. Just like Social Security, there's no changes to Social Security in it at all.
So how is that coming up as an issue?
The same way everything else comes up as an issue online and social media. Somebody starts putting it out there, everybody starts spreading it. I have kind of a running joke that I tell my staff all the time is my favorite quote from Abraham Lincoln is when Abraham Lincoln once said, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
That's a very good one. Do you see this going and passing this week?
That is our target to be able to get it passed. You and I are literally talking as the Senate's in the debate process. I'm downstairs in the Capitol right now, and the debate is ongoing from the time that you and I are talking. But this should be going through the Senate, through the House this week, get on the president's desk.
Okay, well, good luck on that. Moving right along to the next topic that I wanted to just speak to you about is the bombing of the Fordo nuclear facility, and I wanted to hear your take on that. Firstly, whether or not it was the nuclear capabilities were fully taken out. Secondly, without regime change, is peace really feasible with this very malign government, the very malign regime? So can you speak about that?
Yeah, a couple of things. I was actually in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Jerusalem, just about 2 weeks before all this occurred, meeting with all the senior leaders from the area, trying to get some perspective of where things are and having the opportunity to be able to visit with them. I would tell you there's great concern over the Iranian regime because they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism. 5 American presidents in a row have said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Now, Iran not only cannot have a nuclear weapon, they do not have the capability to produce a nuclear weapon. That's a big shift. That's a significant change. That's a partnership between Israel and what Benjamin Netanyahu did, and the very bold move that he made to say they don't have Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis protecting them anymore. We don't know. We know they do not have a good air defense system because Israel had already taken that out. But Benjamin Netanyahu chose to be able to reach in and to say, I'm going to set their nuclear program back as far as we can. President Trump stepped in and said, we can actually put an end to the war by putting an end to their capabilities of producing a nuclear weapon. And only the United States is capable of doing that. This wasn't an act of war. This was an act of self-defense from the United States and our ally Israel and the 700,000 Americans that live in Israel to say, we will not allow this to occur. So what did they do? They did significant damage, taking out their enrichment facilities, taking out significant numbers of their centrifuges, taking out their ability to be able to transition uranium into the weapons material that's needed, that dusting process. You'll hear it called all kinds of different terms. Those buildings were completely destroyed. And we can watch from satellites if any of those have ever rebuilt. So there's this big argument, how many months to years would they have to take to start all over again? I smile at that and say, Iran knows we have their address now. If they restart a nuclear program again, we can go in and hit them the exact same way we hit them before, and to say, no, we will not allow you to have a nuclear weapon. So this has put an end to their nuclear program. Now it's time to be able to have the blunt, hard conversations. What are we going to do with this regime? What kind of agreement needs to be made so they end their terrorism in the region? It's not just the fact they're trying to get to a nuclear weapon, and there is no question they were trying to get to a nuclear weapon, but also to be able to end their terrorism activities in the entire region that destabilizes the entire region. So those are the next steps that go from here. That means we've got to have inspectors on the ground. That means we've got to actually end the terrorism conversations.
So there is this whole, I don't know, fake news or rumors that that trucks were leaving the Fordo site prior to the B-2 bombers bombing it days before, and there was speculation that they were moving out the enriched uranium. I had seen today even a report that there are multiple sites all over Iran because they had planned for, this is what Iran was saying, that they had planned for such an eventuality, and they're able to move the enriched uranium to another site and continue to do what they were doing at Fordo. Is that feasible? Is this true?
So I would say a couple of things. The pictures of the trucks being there, I saw some of those images before, and I serve on the intelligence committee. But I saw a lot of the public pictures that were released saying 2 days before, here are the trucks that were here. Those trucks that were there were actually bringing dirt and concrete to cover the entrances to Fordo because they believed if they put dirt and concrete across the entrances, they couldn't have a ground attack come in, and they would protect themselves from our weapons. What they did not know was how effective our bunker busters were and how they just sliced right through their concrete through the top ventilation shafts like it was butter. So those trucks were actually delivering dirt and concrete to try to help protect the site, not to be able to haul away nuclear materials. Second thing is, when you're actually taking one of the canisters away of 60% enriched uranium, they could take that away in a truck and something else that they would drive out of the facility earlier to be able to move that to somewhere else. But that's also something that at some point our intelligence will pick up on. Right now, that is all buried inside the mountain at this point with very, very significant damage there. And so we'll learn in the days ahead and be able to track this. We have satellites. We have capabilities to be able to determine where that's located. It's how we knew where it was before, because the Iranians had publicized it. It's because we figured it out. And so we'll be able to do that again to be able to track that.
What do you think will happen with regards to the regime? Do you think they will stay in power? Do you think they won't?
I hope the regime doesn't stay in power. I've been one of those folks standing out and saying I'd love to have a different regime leading Iran. For some reason, it doesn't seem to be a crazy thing to me to say I'd like to have leadership in Iran that doesn't want to kill my family. That's just me on it. I'd like to have a shift there. And quite frankly, I think a significant portion of the Iranian people would like to have different leadership in Iran as well, because the money that is being gained by the Iranian regime from the sale of oil around the world is being used to be able to fund terrorism and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and the Shia militants in Iraq rather than feeding and taking care of their own people. I'd love to have opportunities for the Iranian people to be able to actually engage in the rest of the world as many people do in the rest of the region. You look at the prosperity and the way that the people in the United Arab Emirates move all over the world and do business deals and relationships and everything else, and you look literally across the Gulf at what happens to the Iranian people and see the dramatic difference there of just people living in the exact same area and the differences in freedom and opportunity between two nations that are there. So I'd love for the Iranian people to be able to have that, but it's not the responsibility of the United States to be able to choose the leaders of Iran. It's the Iranian people that should be able to do that. And I long for the day when they actually choose leaders and they're able to be able to do that and not live under oppression that they currently live under.
Yeah, who knows? Only time will tell. I guess we will see what happens and what unfolds. Um, the Abraham Accords, but on the eve of October 7th, Saudi was supposedly going to be what we're going to be signing some Abraham Accord agreements with Israel and
Right.
normalizing those relationships. If I remember correctly, Joni Ernst, Senator Ernst, was with a total delegation um, in Saudi Arabia on October 6th,
Right.
and had thought it was going to happen. And then many people feel that that is the reason October 7th happened, to prevent that. Um, do you see normalization now happening with a lot of new countries? And if so, which countries?
Yeah, I do believe that one of the major reasons that the timeline for the Hamas and attacking just so brutally into Israel on October the 7th, 2 years ago, was because that they were approaching Israel and Saudi Arabia were approaching normalization. And for the terrorists in the region, that's their worst case scenario is to have normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But for the people of Saudi Arabia and for the people of Israel, that's another good day when that happens. And I believe that will happen at some point. There are several really positive stories that are happening in the area right now, and President Trump's doing a lot of work on normalization. But let me give you an example. When I was in Lebanon last month, I left Lebanon the most optimistic I've left Lebanon ever, quite frankly. I've been there multiple times. They have a new president, new prime minister in Lebanon. There's active work to be able to secure the border, the land border between Israel and Lebanon. That takes away one of the biggest issues that Hezbollah has had for decades now. They're continue to be able to argue about the border, which is a fake reason for Hezbollah to be able to fight against Israel. That's a whole different issue. But they're very close to securing that. They've already secured the maritime border between Israel and Lebanon. That was very significant. Now it's the land border. But the new leadership in Lebanon are actively working and taking advantage of what Israel has done to be able to attack Hezbollah's military capabilities. That now the Lebanese armed forces have moved into the south, south of the Litani River, where they have not patrolled before, were not allowed by Hezbollah. They're moving into that area. They're seizing weapons. They're taking things on. They have now done over 1,000 different seizures in that area. So they're serious about this and engagement. They've also done seizures north of the Litani River as well. That's also very significant. And the president there and the prime minister in Lebanon have said publicly there's going to be one military in Lebanon, and that's going to be the Lebanese armed forces. There will not be an armed Hezbollah, and there will not be armed Palestinian militias in the Palestinian refugee camps as well in Lebanon. And they've actively started working to be able to disarm those refugee camps. Those are significant moments, not to mention what they have done in the last 6 months for their banking system, that Lebanon is trying to actually have a structured banking system again. That brings in investment, that brings a hopeful future of an economic stability in the area. But just having one military in Lebanon and that being the Lebanese armed forces would be a dramatic shift. That opens up the opportunity for Lebanon and Israel to be able to normalize relations in the future. It's probably not tomorrow, but I could see that now where you couldn't see that just 6 months, a year ago.
And are you as optimistic about Syria with their new leadership?
I did not meet the new leadership of Syria. I went all the way around in meeting a lot of the other folks, but you can imagine there were a lot of conversations about that. This is someone who was a jihadi terrorist, basically, 6 years ago, and now he has a suit and tie on and is saying, "Hey, I want to run a respectable government." The difference here is he actually seems to be reaching out to multiple countries, multiple areas, and as you know from Syria, very, very diverse country. You've got Sunnis and Shias, you've got Alawites, you have Christians, you have Kurds, you have Turks. It's a very, very diverse group that's there in Syria. For them to be able to pull together a coalition government will take outreach. And so far, the new leadership in Syria is reaching out to all those minority groups and saying, let's find a way to be able to have a functioning government with significant diversity in Syria. So time will tell what direction he's going, but he's taking some of the right steps at the beginning. And the leaders that are in the area are all turning to him and saying, we want you to be successful because we want the civil war to be over in Syria and the chaos to be able to end. They all said to me, all the leaders in the area said to me, tell President Trump, thank you for dropping the sanctions on Syria. Those sanctions were on Assad, not on the new leadership. Assad is gone. He's now living a life of luxury in Russia. Hopefully, he's in Siberia, but he's now living in Russia somewhere under their protection. But they were all very grateful to President Trump for dropping the sanctions there, and so there was an opportunity for them to be able to restart. That's a good thing.
Do you think now that Iran is not a nuclear threat, Saudi Arabia will now normalize with Israel?
I think there are a couple other steps there just in relationship with the United States and Israel. I think that Saudi Arabia is also going to wait for the war in Gaza to really be over. And quite frankly, that'll be over when Hamas turns the hostages over. That's the biggest thing that's right now is holding the whole thing back. But when those hostages are out, the war is over in Gaza. I think there is a real opportunity for Saudi Arabia and Israel to normalize relationships. I think both sides want to be able to see that and to see a more stable, free Middle East.
The war between Gaza and Israel. So that is the last topic that I just wanted to touch upon. How do you see that ending? I mean, if they drag out the release of the hostages any longer, they're not going to be alive. It's really very sad.
Yeah, I would tell you, I met with Benjamin Netanyahu. I met with other military leaders and other folks. They are very, very focused on getting those hostages out. They're going section by section through Gaza at this point with the IDF to be able to find those individuals and to be able to bring them home. They could not be more diligent to do that. At the same time, the United States and Israel are cooperating together to be able to get humanitarian aid into Gaza in a way the UN was not doing. The UN was delivering giant sacks of food that had to be broken up, that was literally being taken by Hamas. They were splitting it up and selling it off to be able to earn money to be able to pay other members of Hamas. Israel and the United States are now cooperating together to be able to get in boxes of food that's pre-prepared a week at a time. They have delivered millions of meals now into that area. The day that I was there a month ago was the first day of the delivery of the food boxes. There's now millions of boxes of food that are going in to be able to feed the folks that are there that are living in a very difficult place because Hamas has made it that difficult. They're setting up booby traps, they're destroying buildings, they're hiding in schools and hospitals, all the things that we've seen. Those things are all true. Now Hamas is trying to come in and attack and shoot people and to attack folks around these feeding centers because they know their money's getting cut off because the bags of food are not coming in that they distribute. Now it's being distributed directly to the people, and people don't see them as the savior delivering food. They just see food coming in. And so that's a big shift, and Hamas is trying to be able to fight that out to be able to prevent that. Quite frankly, Hamas has literally put a bounty on the head of the people delivering food to the people in Gaza. That tells you how evil these folks really are, that they're literally trying to kill the people that are trying to bring aid into Gaza because they want to dominate and control their own people. So hostages have got to come out. Once they come out, that obviously new government has to be formed there that is not Hamas led, and then the people there have an opportunity to be able to help rebuild that place.
Did I see somewhere that there's going to be like a multinational coalition in Gaza? And
So
the
at some point, there's not that does not exist yet, but there's got to be a peace. There's got to be an end of hostilities there before that can really be formed. But there are multiple nations that are already engaged in trying to do education there and trying to find ways to be able to help support the day after, as it's often discussed. That is not an Israel-led effort to be able to do that. Israel, I'm sure, will maintain security there, but Israel's not going to try to run that place. That needs to be the people of Gaza running that location, but other nations are going to have to be able to step in and help with the rebuilding.
But with regard to the West Bank, I saw they were saying two-state solution. Is that correct?
I don't hear a lot of people in Israel saying two-state solution. The folks in Israel are saying, "Hey, that ship has sailed. We understand full well what the risks that we have around us, and we want to do whatever we can to be able to make sure we can live in security and peace. It's not that I hate you; it's that I've lost all trust, and they want to be able to have peace and security where they live."
So then what will be with the West Bank?
Yeah, there's a great question. Let's take about 6 hours, and we'll get a chance to talk about that next time we get a chance to be able to get together because you and I both know the complexity of that. I will tell you, there are multiple folks that I have had the opportunity to be able to speak to recently that are Palestinians that are upset with the Palestinian Authority. They are furious at the longstanding hatred between the two because they have business relationships with Israelis, and they want to be able to form separate business relationships with Israel and break away from the Palestinian Authority. So, beginning to be able to see some of the seeds of a future relationship that's based on economic prosperity and hope for the people that live in that area. It probably is not going to look the same as what people would have discussed a couple of years ago, because, as I said, that ship has sailed.
Wow, this has been a very wide-ranging and deeply important conversation, from the big, beautiful bill and its implications here at home to the end of the war in Israel and what the future may hold for that region. Senator Lankford, thank you so much for your insights.
It's
Thank you
good to
for,
get a chance. Yeah, it's good to get a chance to visit with you again, Trudy.
and thank you for your leadership and for your unwavering voice on issues that matter most, both to our nation and to the pro-Israel community. It is always an honor to have you with us, and I really hope that you'll come back soon. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. This has been Nothing But the Truth with Trudy. You can catch us every Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. on the radio. And if you missed any part of this show or want to listen to any of our past episodes, you can find Nothing But the Truth wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep seeking nothing but the truth.